Welcome, everybody, to the Boomer Talk podcast. My name is Jordan. You might know me as One Up Analytics. My co host is Taylor, aka Somebody's Gun, aka Mr. Gun, aka. What's your new name, actually?
SBG.
SBG.
SPG, I think that's a winner. I think you're onto a winner with that
See,
one.
you don't pick your nicknames, and that one was given to me, so
That's nice.
Would you ever classify it as the big SPG?
no.
Some
The whole
SDG.
big trend, it needs to stay away.
Nah.
Our guest this week is a content creator, a streamer, a now official broadcaster, and most importantly, a 3-time Boomer Talk podcast guest.
I think that's the record, right?
That it's tied for the record, actually. I think Bella has also been on 3 times, but it's an exclusive club. It's an exclusive club.
It is, yeah. Tied. I'll take it.
Welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here as always.
All right, cool. So I guess to start off, let's talk about the news. We have 2 solid pieces to talk about. The first would be obviously what happened about 2 hours ago. DreamHack announced the next tournament in November is going to be duos. So let's get a quick response from you guys. How you feeling? What are your thoughts? Jordan, start us off.
I mean, right off the bat, I'm pretty excited. Like, my favorite season of Fortnite was Chapter 2 end of season 1, beginning of season 2, and that was all duos. So it kind of brings back some good memories. I don't know if my duo is going to be able to play with me like he did last time around. That duo being Taylor.
Ooh.
Are we able to say?
No.
Okay, no. All right. But yeah, so I'm excited about duos. Hopefully I'll be able to play. I enjoy watching people play duos. I think it's super easy to follow. So yeah, I'm excited.
I have like ups and downs, right? Because duos is my favorite game mode. I like duos. I love it. But like I like the fact that DreamHack every month was a solo competition, because like the baseline of what I always think about is that you need some level of solo skill to be good in a team mode as well. You don't need, like, it makes you an infinitely better player if you're also good in solos, and it's a good way to practice those other skills that some people might not rely on, right? Like, you need to be able to pop off end game, you need to be able to fight, you need to be able to do like your tunnel, you need to do every single thing yourself. And like a lot of these times when you have players who just like, you know, they go into the IGL category who are just not good at solo players, like it gives these people a chance to get better at their solo play, which gives them better at their trio play consistently like that. So like I'm sad to see the solo gone, because I was like, you know, it was reliable every month. You get like one good solo cup, you can work on your improvement, blah 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 blah. Now, like, I do love duos though, so like I'm happy that's there. I'm just hoping we go into a duo season, to be honest. But like, if we have duo season, would we have a duo FNCS and then a duos DreamHack as well? Is that how it works? I don't know. I'm shooting like spitballing. So I'm glad to see duos back, but I'm sad to lose like some of the solo comp.
Yeah, that's the thing. They don't have arena duos, so is there just going to be no practice for that? Or do you guys think
you just have to like just go into arena trios and have one of your teammates quit. That's it.
Everyone's just going to be like dropping off the end of the bus. There's going to be 33 people that just drop.
Yeah, it's just 66-person lobbies.
Because like it's in 2 weeks on Saturday, so it's like it's after the other FCS. So I don't know, but I hope like I said, duos is my favorite game mode straight up. So I'm very excited to see it return. I may play it, you know. I may play it indeed, because I'll be shite, but I'll play it for the fun, because duos is really good fun. I've already DM'd my old duo. He's not played for ages because he's been doing university work, but he's down, so we'll both be shit, but it'll be good content. So
let's go.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I share basically the same sentiment you guys do. But one thing I do like is how DreamHack Solos fits within the general Fortnite dynamic, and how we're essentially going to be missing that, because cash cups are trash. They're not real tournaments at this point. Maybe at the end you get to play 1 or 2 like actual stacked games, and then before that it's 40-30 man fourth zones, and that's not the high competition that we've seen time and time again that we see in DreamHack. Even your first game in the opens of DreamHack is probably going to be more stacked than most of your Cash Cup games. So, yeah, if you don't get a bunch of points, probably all of them. And I think it gives players an opportunity to prove themselves and show their strengths, show they've been working, and that pop-off ability, it's a level above a Cash Cup. Like, some people are saying DreamHack's a glorified Cash Cup. I would disagree with that because of the rounds and the structure of it. And it's given more importance, what Cash Cup has a broadcast. But I like it, except that we're now taking that one piece that was very, in my opinion, vital to the whole infrastructure of what's going on in Fortnite, taking that out and putting in duos. So we'll see how it works. I mean, obviously, I'm excited. It should be a heck of a lot of fun to watch.
There's one thing on that like, I've had this idea. People like, often like to complain about solo FNCSs when they go on. So I was like, what if there was only DreamHack solos, but it was every single month? So like every month you get a reliable solo competition. No one wants a squads FNCS, surely. I don't know. I don't. Maybe I know you. I know you do. I know you do, Taylor, but no one else does. I don't think that's true. But that's like the lowest amount that people are interested in, we'll say, right? Like people like squad FNCS. I think actually now from an analytical perspective, I would quite want one just to watch how it goes on and actually see the team dynamic. Because like I mainly am coming that prejudice from like a playing perspective. I'm like I didn't enjoy playing squads. I thought it was too chaotic. It was hard to track. All this kind of stuff. But it would be cool if like they did DreamHack for solos. Then you have like fun squad tournaments, like Wild Wednesday. Why is that some of those times not like a squad tournament, like, or hype nights, these kind of things where it's like, just get on with a bunch of friends, play a tournament. It'll be fun. It'll be casual, those kind of things. And then like the serious FNCS tournaments could be like duos or trios. And I was like, then you have a dynamic of everything where you've got constant solo practice, the fun of just playing like squads with your friends if you want. And then you have like, okay, this season's duos, maybe the next one's trio, maybe they already, I don't know, I'm not thought that far ahead in this plan. But it's like, I'd say that takes the majority of people's boxes.
Yeah. And DreamHack was the one constant that we knew, except it's no longer a constant.
Yeah. You also got good games too. So
yeah,
it's sad and positive, I'd say.
I wonder, do you guys think that DreamHack coordinates with Epic at all in terms of how they structure their tournaments? You do?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
You don't get the spectator client get to run $250,000 tournaments a month without having communication and coordination with Epic. It's just not going to happen. All right. And now the other, I guess, big piece of news. We figured this out before the cast. So yesterday there was an update and Fortnitemares back in the game. Thank God. We don't have zombies all over the map, knock on wood.
For now.
And really the only major change has been slight, structural change to the map as far as what agency is. There's a couple more, little places, little huts around the map, but brooms just got removed, so those aren't even going to be in comp. And it's really, unless I'm missing something, just the candy now is the only real addition or change within the map. So how do you guys feel about that? Do you think it really changes much as far as comp? Mr. Reiss.
It's just funny you see Mr. Reiss on the way my Discords land up. It looks like you're pointing to Jordan.
Yeah.
So like, there you go. I don't think like the candy seems interesting. It just seems like more like fishing stuff, really. And more mushrooms. Equivalent. Like there's more stuff on the map you can get for heals, for mobility. I'm all down for that, and the candy stuff seems cool. I'm very, very okay with those. Like you kind of get more peppers, more hop rocks, those kind of things, and some white and blue heals. I'm not entirely sure exactly how they all work, but I know there's roughly similar to like the fish. It was touch and go for a while though when the RPGs came in, and there was 6 or 7 green RPGs at the ruins, which was the authority, and I was kind of wondered, is this going to be a difficult week 3 for the players? Because like that makes that a very powerful POI. But luckily, that was obviously a mistake. They got taken out.
Is it a mistake? or
Sure.
do they
They're
plan
not
to
here.
actually put RPGs in the game, just not yet?
I hope not, because I don't like. They're not. You know what? It's like it's one of those weapons that we've seen time, like over and over and over again. That I just don't. You know, I don't think works in this game very well at all. You know, like it ruins. Well, I was going to say that, but it does actually give a viable way to take height. You need some viable ways to take height, and RPG is the way to do that. I actually, to be honest, maybe like the way if it's just in a supply drop, like it used to be at the end of like chapter 1, because that gives like a bit more validity to those supply drops where, you know, if you there'll be one on the map, maybe two, they're random. It gives you a reason to push for those supply drops. And like an RPG at that point, if there's one on the map, it's fine. If there's 9 when you have triple RPG all spraying high ground, or the high ground team all spraying down, there's like 0 counter to that. That's the kind of thing. But you know, if there's one RPG and or rocket launcher and it's spraying up a height, like you can still maintain height that way. But it, you know, you need to be coordinated to do it, which is fine. Same with the team on mid ground. If they're trying to take height, one RPG, they still need to be coordinated. 3 RPGs, they don't need to be coordinated. They just all shoot up. It has coordination to shoot all 3 at the same time, but at the same time,
It doesn't
like,
even need to be at the
it
same
doesn't
time.
really need to be. Yeah, it needs to be within the same 2 seconds or something like that. So I'm very happy to see that they are not allowed. Are they trying to put them in? I would hope not, because I don't think they fit that well. But again, if they were gonna, my preference would be just to put it in the supply drops like it used to be, and I think that was like a very good fit.
I think Taylor likes it when the Marauders carry around the RPGs and
Zombies.
Yeah, that was interesting. I'm glad that's not happening anymore. I think you know, as the community, we can all say that we tried Marauders and
Zombies.
I'm sorry, zombie Marauders, and I don't think anyone was very like pleased with how that affected competitive. I'm sure, like from a casual perspective, Marauders were pretty fun though. Like, you know, getting more random encounters on the map. I have to fight these people here, you know, from players who are playing pubs rather than players arena. But like, it was one of those things where you have to differentiate the difference and go like, they griefed my game way too many times with stinks and rocket launcher. So I think we can all tick that box and say, right, they're not in it anymore. Thank you. I appreciate that they are gone.
Yeah. They've tried so many different variations of zombies, and now the only one left on the map are in certain areas, and then in the water, and they jump out at you.
The big ones. Well, it makes sense. Like, to me, you know, when you look back at the game's like first inception, it was a zombie game to start with. You know, it makes sense why they've like continually reappeared, because I imagine there's still a lot of that left over. Thinking like, yeah, we could put this in, but like that's great for the, like I said, for the casuals. Like if you watch like any like if you put the video if you look at the video I put on the I didn't put up, that was I helped make on the Fortnite YouTube channel. And then you read the comments of that. It was obviously before the Fortnitemares update. It's very much so like, please give us Fortnitemares update, please. And like literally like nearly all the comments are about that, which is funny. But like it shows you like how much of a demand for this kind of competitive, that non-competitive content there really is, and like how much clearly putting zombies on the map works for a large amount of the player base. But like obviously for us as the more competitive people looking at it, it's not necessarily something that we want to continue to see over and over and over again as the seasons go on.
Definitely. And I had in the doc, you know, would it be worth landing at these new little witch spots? Honestly, not even going to get into that. I don't think it's that important now that the broomsticks are gone. And it's essentially just a little more loot on the map, which doesn't hurt, especially with the 50% chest spawn. Jordan, anything you want to say before we move on to our nerdy topics here?
Not really. I mean, I think you covered it well. There's not really that much to talk. It's like kind of inconsequential.
All right, cool. So we do have, thanks to Rest Spirit, you know, a little discussion thread, and I'll go ahead and just kind of read the intro of it before we dive in ourselves. But here's an interesting difference between esports that are relative, non-changing, and the ones that receive more frequent updates. The perceived validity of complaining increases the more likely a community believes a developer can change something. And he gives an example of Melee. It never changes. Complain all you want. The game has stayed exactly the same for the most part since its inception. Certain tournaments have, you know, things taken out, and he compares that to Fortnite, where we have multiple updates, things constantly changing, and people being under the assumption that they're complaining affects the changes that are going to come. So we'll start with that. Jordan, do you necessarily? You had a good question to get us started here.
Wait, what do you mean? I had a good question to get this started.
All right, I'll read it for you.
Okay.
Does the fact that Epic frequently updates the game and occasionally makes changes based on player feedback cause more complaining within the community, since there is a higher chance that complaining actually works?
Yeah, so I definitely see like the logic in that. That makes sense. Generally, like if you get something that you are complaining about, or you get something that you're asking for, then you're more likely to ask for stuff in the future. But I think like there are other factors at play here. The fact that Epic frequently updates the game makes it basically just gives more opportunities for Epic to fuck up somehow and to make it more viable to complain, if you know what I mean. Like you have a game like Melee that's just at its, I mean, I don't really know that much about Melee, but just going off what Respirate was saying, a game that's at its core, like there's not, they don't have mythic weapons being added constantly, or other POIs or whatever it is, or like mechs or whatever it is. So it's just the game is at its just ground state, and there's no opportunities for them to screw up. Whereas in Fortnite, you have the core gameplay, but then you have them adding a massive game-changing weapon, or a massive game-changing like vehicle like the mech, and that's just another opportunity for them to screw up the game and to make it actually worse, which like warrants more complaining. So I don't know. I think definitely what he was saying makes sense. I think there are other factors at play. What do you guys think?
I think you like there's two parts to that, and I think you kind of nailed both times. And it's like I think the way that you're wording that is not intentionally fucking up the game in some ways, right? Like,
Yeah.
You drop a big update for a huge corner of the map, right? Let's say the Stark Industries. There's bound to be some issues in terms of like balance, be it in terms of, and like people always, I see people complain a ton about like, oh, is this never play tested? Oh my God. But like the amount of times, like these updates come out rapid. There's such a large player base. And like some of these issues are very obvious, right? Sometimes I think I'm like, okay, I could have found that one. But a lot of the times it's like stuff that, unless you have a ton of gameplay going over and over and over again, some of these like issues might not be found very often. And sometimes it's also there's a larger game at stake, right? As we talked about earlier with the zombie situation, like there's obviously a huge amount of player base is based on a more casual side rather than the competitive side. So dropping the example I think of is like when they dropped Stark Industries, how the performance around that area wasn't very good for high-end PCs, obviously, and it was a kind of jittery and FPS drops all over. But like it's rather than slowing that update down to stop what would really be like the higher end people and the competitive people like us, they'll probably push that update so that it pleases the majority of people, right? Little Timmy loves Iron Man, so we're gonna do that, and that will cause issues for like the competitive side. So like I've come to kind of think about a lot of these bugs more like that, where it's like you gotta think about these at a little bit broader spectrum, and I think that's what Jordan was trying to say as well. And yeah, constantly updating it like that will cause issues every now and then. And sometimes if anyone's ever written a line of code or done anything on the computer ever, you'll realize one small change can mess up something hugely that you would never have thought about. Like the broomsticks, for example, not being in. Sure, that maybe could have been quick. Maybe they thought it wasn't going to be in, and it ended up being in. Wasn't intentional to do so. Same with the RPGs. Some of these things that are like you just wouldn't think of straight away, and you thought you might have covered, maybe not be. It's like anything can happen when you're working on a computer, in all honesty. So that's the first part. Second point, absolutely. Like I look at it like a spoiled kid on Christmas. You get one present, it's amazing, and then there's something that isn't working perfectly. I'm going to complain on Twitter. Oh my God, pulse fix. hashtag fix mechs, bring them back. And it's that kind of thing where people, and like right now everyone is just complaining 24/7 about everything anyway, and like Twitter, Reddit, all these kind of forums, so that are always going to be a big way to host a lot of these complaints over and over, because it's an open forum. People complain all the time. I guarantee if there was no Twitter, there's no Reddit, and it was all just feedback person to person, like probably these complaints wouldn't be as frequent, just because everyone has this format where they can just complain over and over and over again. But it is fundamentally goes back to the fact you get something you want and then it doesn't work. Oh, I'm going to complain. And then next time is good, and then it's not what you want. I'm going to complain again. And like that repeated update over and over again will cause people to be more happy with the game in a sense, because they keep getting changes with it. But at the same time, is having the effect on the people who aren't happy. They're just going to moan.
And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, just generally, like typically the negative voices are the louder ones. Definitely. So even if there's tons of people being like, "Wow, I love this update," you'll have one or two pros tweet something negative about a change, and that's the thing that blows up, as opposed to let's say someone like Cypher going out and having so much fun in Fortnitemares, right? So it's just generally the way things work. What do you have to say, Jordan?
No, I just think this is funny that this is the discussion where we talk about how much Epic listens to the community, because I feel like there's just this narrative in the community that Epic never listens to anything that the players want, anything the players say. And now we're in a situation where we're talking about like the problem is that Epic is listening to them too much. Like it's just such a weird concept to me. But yeah,
I think it's in a personally, I see genuinely them as like a much more positive entity in terms of like listening to the community's feedback in general, right? Like some of the, in particular for a competitive side, and it's a slow process from what we've seen in terms of like rolling up this, but this season has had all the mythics bar Doom's loot stripped out, right? Like literally, that's the only mythics that's still in. They put loads of them in. Iron Man's ones aren't there. All the other ones aren't gone. I mean, I wish Doom's loot wasn't there personally as well, but at the same time, it's like that's clearly from a point that there's been a huge amount of progress, and like that's been slow over the seasons, but that's finally something that we've been asking for like 2 seasons, where we're 2 seasons since chapter 2 season 2, where we're like, man, this mythic minigun really ain't that cool. It's kind of ruining some of our games. And then it kind of comes to fruition maybe 2 seasons later. Now, okay, we don't have, imagine we had the Iron Man's Unibeam in the game. Like that would be horrible. That would be one of the worst updates. 90 damage to any player through any layer of builds. You could hit 6 people at once with it for 90 damage. It would be chaotic in a stacked end game. It would just be ridiculous. And I like mad props for like finally getting ahead and kind of removing some of these items up front. So like I think that's going a much more positive route generally with that kind of communication. And it does seem like we're kind of getting a little bit more of a split between the casual side and the arena side. This is the first November where there's not been zombies in the game, so I'm very happy about that.
Yeah.
Knock on your desk, please.
I did.
Okay.
I don't know if it's real.
Yeah, I generally agree. And the way the mythic is implemented now, there's one of them. Yeah. There's not multiple of them. There's the high risk, high reward. Besides the whole thing that happens in the finals if somebody owns a drop spot. But in semis and opens, it has that balance to where you might die off spawn because there could be 5 teams, 10 teams landing with you, and the mythic is not necessarily worth dying off spawn 6 games and possibly winning 2.
Drop swap balance is a whole other thing we could get into, but there are ways that I wish it was, which aren't right now. But still, I've been talking about that a lot.
No tangents yet. No tangents yet. We have another question. So Respirit kind of goes on to talking about how the meta formulation and the discussion around the meta is not, from my understanding of reading it, is not as good as it could be because people are more complaining about the game and broken things rather than focusing how to play within what they're given, right? Epic is giving us something, and if you focus more on what you have instead of what's there or what you could possibly get taken out, is that going to create a stronger meta? And essentially my question to you guys is, does the focus on change and complaining take away from the meta discussion and even at times hinder the development of certain metas.
Yeah, so I'm gonna push back on what he said a little bit. I think that like people are creatures of habit. They don't like change in general. Even when there's good change, you're bound to have some amount of complaining. Like I don't know, like if somebody decides to move from New York to London, even if they wanted to move to London, once they get there, it's going like there's going to be a transitioning period where things are going to be foreign to them, and they're going to struggle a little bit. And that's when they decide to do something, and it's a good decision. Now you're talking about a game where the players have no control over what the developer does. The decisions are being made for them. The changes are being made for them. There's bound to be some complaining at the beginning because it's just going to be a transitioning period. The problem comes in Fortnite where it just feels like they're constantly in a transitioning period because the seasons are the length that they are, a few months or whatever. You're in a transitioning period, and then just as maybe you get towards the end of the season, maybe there's a little bit less complaining because people are getting more used to the meta. They're out of that transitioning period. They're discovering ways to overcome like overpowered mythic items or whatever. And then bam, we have another new season. Everything's changed. They have to start transitioning into that. So it's just like this constant transitioning period, it feels like. And I don't think that's an accident from Epic's perspective either. Like, I think that they really like having the game feel fresh, having the game have, new content, new items all the time. That's definitely a choice that they've made. But, like the downside of that is what I just said, is that there's never enough time for people to develop like counters to overpowered weapons. And so it just kind of will be in a constant state of complaining.
I think there's enough time in terms of a season, right? So if season's 8 weeks, which is a lot shorter than we normally have seen, but like, if you play for 8 weeks, you can figure out a way to overcome the Doom's mystical bomb at that point. And like players have now realized, one layer off low ground, these kind of things, not being ultimate low, don't get burnt by the fire, and just good luck taking height while it's in play. All these kind of little things that are there, I think people figure most of them out relatively quickly, but I think that's in the top pro scene. Like these guys figure out how to get away from Doom's mystical bomb, the gauntlets. They figure out how to use them in the first couple of weeks, and then like most of the time that's pretty stagnant throughout the seasons. Like the minigun I mentioned earlier, most people realize pretty early on, okay, if we get height with this, sweet, we're just gonna spray, and you realize like how powerful a high ground position is when you're using that like mythic minigun as it was back then. I think the problem then comes to like the average competitive player where they are complaining. They'll just say, wow, Doom's mystical bomb, I hate it. And obviously I'm not a proponent of it. I don't think it works very well in the meta, but you can say, oh, and they're not, I hate this, it's so overpowered, I got killed by it, it blows up my build, it's wasting my mats, I get griefed. But they don't really figure out methods to get kind of try and combat that at all. I definitely think that does hinder the discussion in the earlier stages. And it's not probably until a lot of these players get into like the later weeks of the FNCSs, for example, when they might realize some of this stuff. And obviously there's people like, like us who make content about it. We can obviously talk about counters and stuff like that. But like just from their own understanding and their own discussion, I do think that it does hinder it a little bit. Because most people will just be too annoyed. There's going to be complaining all the time. They're not going to be like, okay, how can we actually figure this out as a community? How can we figure out how to actually get around some of these issues? So, yeah.
Well, and from a competitive perspective, figuring it out doesn't necessarily mean you want to share it. There's probably certain trios out there that have figured out, hey, Zate's on height, here's how we want to play this game. And unless you go in and, understand that for yourself through replays, that's really going to be known within a small cluster of people. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't share that. Like if I'm one of the top trios, I'm not sharing that information as to how I can counter X. And I think not even necessarily the meta of Dooms is developed into what it could be, because I think it took several weeks of realizing that you can sit on ultimate height with Doom's gauntlets and not take fall damage. But people also didn't realize you could do the same thing with crash pads. You don't have to have Doom's gauntlets to do that same thing. So that's kind of that back and forth that we're seeing. And because like Jordan said, we're in a constant state of transition. It took a couple weeks into FNCS to people to realize that instead of knowing it going in. When we had crash pads all last season, people could have been doing the same exact thing last season, and I did not see it happen, right? People played ultimate height, but it wasn't like 8 layers above everyone else because you knew you couldn't take fall damage. So even little things like when I was in your stream last week, Reiss, when you were watching Reet, and you learned that you can jump, throw the crash pad, jump into someone's box instead of switching to it, throwing it, and then having to switch back to your weapon. That's a little change that should be known worldwide. And not many people do, because I think we focus more on, I shouldn't say we're probably like the opposite side of the spectrum. But like the community focuses more on the big elephant in the room as opposed to figuring out all these little things.
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily purely just because of the fact that, you know, they're trying to figure and complain about the other stuff, but you know, it does make an impact. Like I've messed around with crash pads for seasons and I haven't figured out that you could do that. And you'd think that would be something that would be fairly, you know, you'd think that would be something that most people would just figure out just off the top of their head. They're like, oh, maybe you can use these when you double jump. Maybe you can double jump into someone's box. But I think like that one in particular was more just because people didn't know. You know, just I don't know how. I'm trying to figure out why people didn't know that. Just sometimes you just don't think of some things, you know, as a community. So I don't know if that's necessarily just because of the fact that they're complaining too much.
I don't think it's because of the complaining, but I think it's more of what Jordan said, is it's a constant state of change. Yeah. So you don't focus on learning the things that are in the game as well as you could, because things are expected to change quickly and you don't know if it's going to be worth your time.
How many people have you seen mess up a shockwave into someone's box? Like, how do people still not know how to shock, like the correct distance to shockwave like straight into someone's box at this point? Like, that's something that everyone should have down 100% by now. Shockwaves, like Shockwave Launcher was in last game. Shockwaves have been in multiple times. They're in for the whole season, and I'm still seeing people shockwave and not be able to get into people's boxes with it yet. It's like, so yeah, maybe you're right.
Yeah, cool. I think Taylor nailed it on the head when he said that you're not going to have, like, if top players find a new strategy, they're not going to share it right away. No. You're definitely always going to have your innovators who find stuff first, but like, if we had more time, eventually like the secret's going to come out. Like, these games are all publicly available. You can't hide it. You're, you know, implementing the strategy right there for everybody to see. So like eventually those strategies would come out and they get implemented on a wider scale. I think the problem right now is just that there's not enough time for that to happen, because FNCS ends. Even if you pick up a strategy from a top player during FNCS, season's over, you know, that item could be out of the game.
Yeah, but would you want seasons to be longer though? Because to be honest, for me, the way I've always liked it is like, you have a season pretty static of changes, new season, cool, new items, new map, you know, big, you know, like new corner of the map, or, you know, wherever it is, changes in this area, like big changes. I like big map changes personally every season. You get used to that, keeps the game fresh. Like if we were playing on the same map all the time, all the same items, like it would get pretty stale. I know that's not what you're suggesting. But like, would you think lengthening the seasons would make that less stale? Because like Chapter 2, Season 2, and, you know, ended up having duos FNCS and then solo FNCS Invitational, and 2 FNCS in one season, and it ended up feeling pretty long. I think most people were like, man, we want this meta to be over after, you know, it was lagging on for so long. So do you think that would work better at being longer?
I'd have to think about it. I agree with you. It does tend to get stale, and maybe that's because we're just used to having so many changes. But I think my main point there is basically I wouldn't blame it on players spending time complaining instead of spending time figuring out new metas or you know, new strategies. I think if given the time, the complaining would go down. They would figure out strategies. Just they're not really given the time. So we shouldn't really blame it on complaining, basically.
I agree.
And I don't think you necessarily need to make the season longer. Maybe just extend FNCS past 3 weeks of qualifiers.
Yeah, I would like. I mean, this is just a totally different discussion now, but like to have, I think like the three qualifiers, because there's like so many consistency points and like so many people placing through consistency, like the 3 weeks. I'm like, I'd rather have longer weeks and less consistently placed. That would be the same thing. You'd have more time to kind of get your ideas around the meta in, and also you'd have more people actually place rather than getting consistency. Because like I feel like a lot of times there's not. This is a bit of a sidetrack, but not as much hype around people qualifying now when they're like, oh, we know these people have made finals, so they'll or round 3, so we know they're just going to qualify for heats through consistency anyway. So like, kind of kills some of the qualifier vibes a little bit. And I think extending the FNCS weeks may help that one out a little bit. Because like, let's be the ultimate hype for qualifiers was World Cup, despite the fact like it was the worst qualification system in terms of like you having to make top 8 in EU in solos or 6. I can't remember which one it was. And if you didn't make that top 6, you weren't making it out of 3,000 people, and that was a terrifying sight. But week 10, oh my god, the hype was real. If you hadn't qualified yet, you had these spots to make it, and you know, like that excitement was so real. But I'm not suggesting we go back to that, obviously. But if we made it like, even just a little bit longer, you could probably fill it with more qualification slots, a little bit less consistency, make them each one feel a little bit more important as well.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that because we've had both.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I'm almost a fan at this point of now going one way or another. Like
Yeah,
instead of having both, like you said, it kind of takes away the whole excitement. And if we just had a single way, this is how you qualify, I think that might increase the excitement a little bit.
Yeah. And more people would complain, I'm sure, but play better.
Yeah. Hey, we don't play, so like.
Yeah, I could say play better. Come on.
All right. Any closing thoughts here before we move on to our final topic here, boys?
My closing thought is Respirate's cool. He always makes good threads. Go follow him.
All right. Cool. This last one, pretty nerdy topic as well. Similar vein, and I more just want to throw this out for discussion of, you know, there's developing philosophies, or I guess growing philosophies within the game, and one team and, you know, one coach doesn't necessarily need to play and think about the game the same way as another team does. For example, just, you know, simply put, high ground versus a team play that wants to play low ground or mid ground, like that. Those are different philosophies that clearly work, right? We saw Zayt come in first week 1, and then we saw Booga, Jamper, and Avery come in second, and they're more of a mid-ground team and don't necessarily look to take height all the time. That's just an example of, you know, different philosophies within the game. And to start, what does this mean, and how do you guys think they'll develop moving forward?
You want to go, Jordan? No. Okay, so there are two main ones this season that I can really think of. Firstly, you nailed it with low ground, high ground. You know, in solos, for example, you don't have as many people who are having such a big distribution in terms of like, I will never go for high ground. My main focus is to stay low or one layer above the ground, right? But in team games, you have way more materials. There's more opportunities for picks in terms of your team is larger, so you can go for more mat, you get more mats, blah 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 blah. And I think the two main ones are low ground, high ground, and like, where are you going to land? Like, are you going to land contested in one of these big bad boy spots, or are you just going to try and roll up on some other POI and try and own that? And like, those are like the two main philosophies for this season, unless you can think of any other ones. I'm sure there'll be some good ones there too. But like, these two are huge. And right now it's like, it's so interesting to me because for low ground, high ground, it's like the guys who are playing low ground are playing it so well, right? Nate, Kezix, 4ZR, EU, 1-2 weeks in a row, low ground team, totally dominant. I don't think they had height in a single. I think they like shockwaved height like 2 games or something like that in the end. I didn't win any of them, so it didn't even matter for the height there. But like, you know, super consistent team landing there, and like that was going very well. The problem is like, now when you're taking height without Doom's Ball, it's like other people can take it, so you're just not going to be as consistent. So is it worth going for the Victory Royale by taking height all the time? Obviously, you get another 5 placement points overcome the second. Or is it just worth it to rotate, keep that low ground layer, be consistent all the way through, and just get continual good placements? And like, as if you have a team who has fantastic box fighters like Kezix, I point myself like amazing, like Kezix, Nate, and 4ZR. Like these guys can fight. These guys can fight. These guys frag the fuck out, bro. And like, if you have these guys, why would you put them on height? They're not gonna be as consistent, and they're not gonna get as many eliminations at all. So it's like, it doesn't even make sense for a team like this. If you have teams who's like worse at box fighting and has like a really solid high ground strategy, can always take it, has a drop spot where they can consistently get shockwaves, consistently have ideas to pressure the teams below, then yeah, maybe high ground's the way for them. And obviously, like Zate's half stretch team who did really, really well, 2 wins in a row on any East last week. And these guys were like completely different strategies, but equally winning each region, doing really well together. So it's like, it's interesting to see the differences in that. But I think it's just their game plan in general. And it's always going to be that way. There's always going to be teams who are going to be focused on high ground because they just want to get the Vic Roys. They think this is the way that's most consistent for them. Always going to be teams who play low ground. There's also just going to be teams who are just going to be in the middle who are lost, not doing like either or perfectly. They're just kind of a little bit more shambles, taking a bit of a weirder layer,
Just surviving.
Just being, they're not thriving. They're surviving in those layers. So. And the other part of that is like drop spots, right? I've said straight up multiple times since the FNCS warm up, if you get Dooms or Stark uncontested this season, and you are a top 10 team, you will place top 5, like straight up. It's like people were mocking Booga's team for not winning when like Stark, like, they came second. It's not like they came 9th or 21st or something like that. Like they came second, and I was like, it is literally, I don't want to say a free roll, but it is, the loot there is so good. You can be so consistent out of those 2 draw spots, so good. So the problem they have is obviously other players is thinking the same thing, so then they contest it. Then when it's contested, it's just nowhere near as good anymore because, in my opinion, uncontested draw spot over contested, either of those 2 drops by far, and that's what we've seen every single week. You have in EU, you have 2 of the best teams, Aqua, Noah Riley, Rezon, contesting Benji, Savage, and Mitlechi. None of these teams are doing good because they're just fighting all the time. So it's like, but I guarantee if one of these teams was uncontested, one of the other teams had to move, that team would go straight up top 5. So that's where the balance is. Do you go here, fight a team potentially, ruin your whole game, their game, or can you luck it, alpha it, get it uncontested, or do you just alpha up Lacy Lake, get 900 AR ammo and win the game, or Sweaty Sands?
Yeah. And both are viable possibilities, and I think that's what I was getting at here is like you gave specific examples, which awesome, thank you.
I got you back.
And for me, I just love to see this game develop in a place where we're getting to this part. It's not, I don't think we've always had a team that wanted to play low ground, right? Like previously, I don't know, maybe a couple seasons back, we had 2 straight solos FNCSs, so that kind of ruins it. But there was, a general within the community idea of, hey, height is the way to go. If you have height, you win the game. And now it's coming to a point where that's not necessarily true. You may win the game, but the volatility, especially right now with all the shockwaves and crash pads and bouncers, all the ways you can gain height, there's now some variance as to who can actually play height, hold it, and win the game. Because you may hold height for a zone, say you take it in 6. You're probably going to be contested by 2 different teams through 7th and 8th zone, not even talking about 9th. And is it more viable to play low ground? I don't know. I mean, obviously,
I think it is.
Yeah.
And we've seen that it's, so far.
Yeah. Well, we've seen both work, which is so cool, in my opinion. But when I was talking to Jordan about this, the thing that came to my mind was, I don't know if you're an NBA guy, but how the Houston Rockets are playing much different than any other team within the NBA. At least last
thrown
season.
Over their back every time. Closing their eyes.
It came from a point, I'll let Jordan talk about this more, but like statistically, either shooting threes or hitting a layup or dunking is the most efficient way to play the game. And I think teams are starting to realize that low ground might be the most efficient way to play out a tournament. If you want to go into that more, Jordan.
I guess, yeah. I mean, it's not too different from what we were talking about with the last topic. Like, basketball is a game that has not changed since its inception. I mean, like, a little bit, but it's taken, all those years, and they still didn't know that three-pointers and layups were, like, the most efficient shots, and you should not be taking mid-range twos for the most part. But more recently, that's become more obvious, and obviously, like, the Rockets are a team that are very well known for that. They came to this conclusion through analytics, which is not very common in the Fortnite community. We don't really have a ton of stats at our disposal, but
I wish we had more.
But and then, like, you could, if you look at, like, shot charts from, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago in the NBA to now, you could see, like, almost every team has like caught on to that trend and has followed up. Maybe not to the extent that the Houston Rockets have, but, like, there, if you look at a shot chart from, like, 2005 for the NBA, every team just shot all over the court. Didn't matter where it was, they shot. Now, if you look at it, every team has a line around, like, the perimeter of the 3-point line, and then a cluster right in the paint, like right where the basket is, and that's basically it. There's a little bit of variation from team to team, but, like, people have caught on. The Houston Rockets maybe been, like, the first team, or one of the first teams to innovate. Maybe it's kind of like analogous to top players finding a new strategy of playing on low ground. But then other teams have caught on to that and implemented it.
That'd be sick. And it'd be pretty easy to figure out as well. If you took, not pretty easy, it would be pretty time consuming to collect that data for Fortnite and be like, hey, okay, we have 12 games of this grand finals coming up. How many, like, who is playing the most consistent and what is their play styles? And you can do that across all regions, see what the most consistent way to get points and win. And there'll be anomalies like Brazil. Kings team's going to win from high not every game, maybe 50% of the games. So it's like, there'll be anomaly teams like that. But at the same time, it's like, if you pick the winners, what is their general play style? And you can probably pretty easily say, okay, on average, they stay on this layer and that's their main goal. Sometimes they take hikes, they have an opportunity to do, and it's, maybe they win the game that way. But I think that'd be a very interesting data to see. It would be extremely time consuming to collect that because it'd be very manual in terms of, like, literally looking every single game, every winner, and going all the way through. Because at the same time, like, if you looked at most wins, it'll be people who take height, like, between, like, at fifth or sixth zone and maintain it all the way through. Like, that's the majority of wins in general in trios right now, because there is enough mats to keep you going all the way through moving zones. So it's like, maybe, but, like, an individual win isn't the whole win of the tournament or the top 5 of the tournament, right? That's where, like, more consistent play styles come through. So I think you would see more consistent low ground teams than high ground teams in general, just because of that main reason.
I'd agree. I personally, I think it's very cool to see things develop like this. We had the history of the game, and if we make the analogy to basketball, 2005 was like back the last time we played trios. The playing high ground was the wave. Everyone wanted to play high ground, and now not stats driven, but for some reason or another, teams have decided to play on low ground, and it's just cool to see. Do
you think that would change with the meta? And, like, if it was obviously, like, solos is obviously a big difference because obviously you don't have enough materials to keep height, all these kind of things. Like, you can't take height through all the way through movings. But it was like trios and squads, I feel like it's much more viable. Like, height's much more viable because you can have enough materials to maintain it all the way through, right? Duos, you can't maintain it all the way through from like first. You can maybe take it from, like, end of first moving for, like, sixth all the way to the end. That's usually when people, like, try to claim height in duos without getting too many picks. But, like, I wonder if it's very item dependent as well, because, like, right now, the mobility to take height is shockwaves, crash pads, which people aren't really using to take height that often, and bounce pads, which are pretty rare. So, like, most people aren't using them to take height either. There's no RPG to knock down high ground at this point. And then on top of that, you have the guys on height with the Doom's Mystical Bomb, which obviously was disabled last week. Seems to still be disabled this week. I tested it at the patch, so unless they re-enable it, please don't. So like, you have teams on high ground who are really blasting down on the people below, especially even with the gauntlets as well. It's very difficult for them to take height because they need shockwaves to do it. So like, I think that's why players are like, okay, maybe we're just going to play low ground, be way more consistent this meta. But like next season, maybe there's launch pads, maybe there's rift to goes. I highly doubt, because I hope there's no rift to goes. That's like the freest mobility in the world. Maybe there's 5 times the spawn rate of shockwaves or something like that, right? Then like how does that change what's high ground, what's low ground, all this kind of stuff? Like how does that impact that more? Maybe there's fire everywhere and low ground is not viable, and there's a flamethrower, and oh god, don't if anyone's listening, please don't put a flamethrower. But if there's something along those lines that just negates low ground, like how's that going to impact where people decide to go? So this discussion might be different next season.
And one thing you didn't touch, you talked specifically about height, but there's also now so many advantages of playing low ground that are going to stay consistent. Cool. When you're shambles, you're going low ground, and those are easier elims than you will find on high ground typically, just because of how much coverage there is, and the players that are shambles are going to be dropping down. Plus, we have 3 different items that you could drop people into your box or your tarp in this meta. One of them just being triple spraying, and shockwaves and crash pads being the other 2. So there's definitely a meta / item perspective as to why these 2 philosophies work. And I don't know that it was intentional by Epic to have both of these be viable. Good for them if it was.
Probably
if
not.
Oh well. Yeah. I'd love to see them continue this balance where it's not just a constant high ground is the play, is the wave, and continue with some items that promote low ground. I mean, even a car is a solid reason to play low ground, because you could rotate in it for not free, but sometimes just drive a car through a moving zone.
I'm not shooting a car in a moving zone. Like, what's the point in that? I'm getting in it. Like, I'm joyriding with these boys. We're Need for Speed in this end game. That's it. I can't shoot them. We're chilling. As long as it doesn't get blown up, I'm fine.
All right. Awesome. I enjoyed that. Well, if anyone in chat has questions, we're open questions from you guys. I know we got some early on. And if you're still with us, thanks for hanging out. Let's see. We had a couple questions. So, I mean, this is an easy one. Do you think they will add arena duos? And if they don't, will we be playing DreamHack duos in the regular mode, or will they make a special tweak for DreamHack?
I mean, so usually what happens when a season's over, there's almost zero chance, purely based on history, that we'd get arena duos before FNCS is over. So that's obviously next weekend. So that would give basically a week of arena duos, if it does get enabled, right? I think there's a possibility, but it all really depends upon what the next FNCS is. So it would make sense if the next one was duos, or if it was solos and there was duo cat. I don't know how it was going to work. Man, imagine it. People would be so mad if there's another solo FNCS. But yeah, if there's another solo one or duo one, for example, it would make sense to re-enable it. But I don't think we'll know until this grand finals of the FNCS is done. So, and I think practice for that will just be trios, and you just have to have good luck, basically. Maybe up until that last week, that's my guess. If it gets enabled, it'd be cool if it would. But I think it wouldn't make sense to have 3 different types of arena, because the queue times would be bad, the games would be even worse. I don't think it would work very, very well at all. It's just not. We've never had 3 arena types, and that's probably because of queue time reasons. So
yeah, I don't necessarily see it happening, but that week time frame, if you're spot on with that seems like a perfect, hey, FNCS just ended, let's switch gears. Duos Arena comes in right away, and you get a practice for DreamHack, and then they announce winner royale for the first week of December or something like that. You know, I could so see that happening, because we're starting to get slightly more organized with the way tournament structures and scheduling comes around. So if I had to guess, this is, you know, a hint at what's to come.
That's what I hope. That's what I hope.
I don't know.
You never know. You never know. And like, it would be interesting, even if it, say next season was trios, right? And they keep a consistent like trios every season. You go, you get FNCS trios every season. Even if it was like, hey, you know what? We've just had the FNCS trios. How about we have a week break, play some duos, and do like arena and have arena duos, and then you also have DreamHack duos. And then, you know what, even after that, if it like reverts back to trios for true FNCS or something like that, I'm like, that would be cool. It would be a shame if there was a DreamHack without any like arena to practice it in.
Or even if they did it in just a regular mode, I feel like that'd be so weird.
Just like pubs.
Yeah, right?
That would be hilarious, actually. No moving zones, all goes down to a heal off.
All right. Jordan, have anything for us or no? All right, cool. No. Now, another question. Do you think Fortnite would cater to their older audience and host a Boomer Cup, maybe 21 plus and over to play?
That would be sick. I would so play that. I'd be in it. That's like a pretty small demographic of players. Yeah. Let's be real. So I don't think we'll ever do it, but like, hey, hook me up. I'm playing if you are. Like,
how would they even know if you're 21 or over?
That's a good point, right? Like,
would it
be legit?
They could have you like send in a picture of your ID, but like that's
Bro, we all got
happening.
driving license. We got driving license. We're of age.
Well, you have to verify your ID to play anyway. Like, you can't play tournaments unless you're 13.
Well, yeah, you know? But
and you have to verify your payments. You have to verify your payments. So if you win, there's gonna have to be some way of verifying your age. So it could just be, you know, you have to be over 21, and based on your verified information on Epic Payment ID or whatever it may be. I don't know. I don't actually see it happening. I can see third-party tournaments happening like that.
Yeah, I think a few of them have happened before.
Yeah, the Boomer Cup.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Never got an invite. Just saying. Never got an invite.
What else we got? I like Doomsball. Why do you think it's bad? Reiss, you've kind of been the resident Doomsball hater. Go ahead.
I wouldn't say hater. I'd say a guy who doesn't feel like it fits the competitive meta very well. On high ground, it basically makes it almost impossible for other teams to take height if you've got it solidified well by consistently pressuring the teams below with the blowback damage it does, which obviously interrupts their ability to climb up, then also setting their builds on fire. I'll combine that with the fact that the other person has the gauntlets, infinite ammo consistently spraying down. It makes height way too powerful. And then when it comes to the end game, to the 9th zone, it's really, really difficult for any team to get through that when they just doomsball onto the low ground and the whole grass goes on fire. And that's it. It's a fun add to the game. Yeah, it's fun for pubs, but obviously we're talking from a competitive situation. So, you know, it's not fun to get to an end game and be set on fire low ground because the guy on height has the doomsball. And then you take 20 if you go into zone, you take 20 HP a tick because you take the fire and the storm damage at the same time. So it's like you just get wiped. So it doesn't fit well for the competitive scene at all. And also you could just throw it at any random base while in mid game, you know.
Yeah. Another one from Glass is, if vaults and mythics weren't a thing, what do you think the best POI would be?
Sweaty Sands straight away because it has like the most chests, and like that seems to be one of the most consistent drop spots for a huge amount of chests. Slurpee isn't that great, really, because you have to kind of grab a bunch of other area at the same time. Because it gives you that infinite shield, but like, you know, there's 19 chests in Slurpee alone, and then you put like lower chest spawn rate on that at the same time, and it's like, that's not a lot to sustain 3 people. And all the chests are also spread out pretty wide, so like it makes solo play difficult because you have to do like a long looting path and grab materials and grab the shields while you're in there. So like solos can be difficult in there, in particular if you don't have good chests about. So like sweaty or lazy straight away, and like I would like it that way. And like, even if these POIs didn't have vaults or mythics, and it was like the best POI was purely based on like chest numbers or like material numbers as well. You know, good shields, good all that kind of stuff. Like I think that's the way that creates the best storylines for competitive, because like right now when it comes to drop spots, it's kind of like who's going Dooms, who's going Starks,
Yeah.
everyone else is uncontested, and like it's difficult for me to try and like bring storylines around that, because it is really just like, okay, well these guys are contested, so they're not going to do well. Starks guys are contested, they're maybe do well some games. The guys who are Dooms are contested. Okay, so who's uncontested? And then we're just like not talking about early game at all anymore. So like from a storyline perspective, I wish it was that way. It would spice things up a bit. Oh, okay, today we have Steamy Stacks is really contested, and these teams are fighting out here, all this kind of stuff. So
yeah, definitely ruins the narrative, and we don't truly get to see which POI is great because those two rule over everyone.
Yep.
And we just kind of have to have everyone live within that space.
Yeah,
I would disagree. I like Slurpee. Slurpee would be my favorite POI just because of the consistency within loot and then adding the fishing into it. I think that's a little better than more chest spawns in this 50% chest spawn worlds we live in.
I think that for the current meta, if I was talking about the current meta, the biggest issue is like is actually consistency, because week 1 or qualifier 1, as I'm trying to use the actual terms, it's called qualifier 1. Qualifier 1, we saw like Creo, Bucky, and Canada do extremely well coming out of there, and they had good loot, they had good shockwaves, etc. Next week, not so good loot at all. Had to rush because they're far zones, which meant they couldn't get as much space, which meant they got shockwaves, which means they didn't take height as much, didn't get as good rotations because of it. So it's like it was not consistent at all throughout the 2 weeks that we've had so far. And because of that, it's just like a smaller amount of chests, right? It's like if you have 40 chests, you're much more likely to get some shockwaves than you are to not. And like right now, having shockwaves it's very nice.
Well, and it's very zone dependent too. We don't necessarily get to see it tested. If you get a bunch of Stark zones landing at Slurpee, all right, it's not going to be a good day. But if you land Sweaty and get a bunch of catty corner zones, Slurpee's probably the better play because of the rotate. So I don't know. It's a good question. I think we could probably blabber about that for a little longer. Let's see if we have
also not as many good car rotates from Slurpee. There's a point I'll put out, because you have to go through so much water, and if you go east, you really struggle with car rotates because of the angle. There's the one road to the north of it, but it takes you a few different directions. You're kind of funneled through one area where you can easily get third partied. If you take like a Sweaty rotate from cars, the mid and early game is actually so much easier because you have so many opportunities you can take vehicle rotates through, and no one's talking about how good vehicle rotates are. That's another thing people haven't figured out yet.
Yeah.
Drive your cars, get your license, boys. You'll be chilling.
Well, a lot of the players can't drive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is there any other questions? We have a very nice person in chat saying wonderful things that are being automated out. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but
I guess we'll talk. Last one is Fire 2 OP, and do you think gas cans are OP or balanced?
I like gas cans. I know other people don't, because you watch pros use them and they double stack them, but fundamentally it takes up an inventory slot to do that, and you can only carry one at a time. So it's like I don't really think they're worth carrying unless you're like a really scuffed loot the majority of the time. Like if you come out of a POI with good loot, you're not going to take a gas can. And it's like, I don't think fire's OP. I think it's the infinite fire pretty much you can get with the Doom's Ball that makes it difficult. Like you're not really seeing teams take a gas can, like playing height, taking a gas can and throwing it down end of moving zones to set the whole place on fire. Maybe that's a strat that we've not looked into yet. Maybe it has happened a few times, but like fundamentally, like that's not something that like consistently is happening over and over again. So like I think they're okay. I don't really see much of an issue with them at all, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, because if you have an optimal loadout, it's not including gas cans. There's no reason you take a gas can, like you said, unless you're just shambles and that's what you get stuck carrying. It's cool for a Twitter clip. You're playing scrims, you and your buddies carry 3 gas cans, throw them on someone. But if you don't get in a perfect situation to do that, they're going to wind up being useless and hinder you more than help, because if you're close enough to that explosion, you'll probably get sprayed as well. So
Mm-hmm.
even that strategy isn't gonna work out super well for people.
That's a good point, actually. For it to work well, you need to carry more than one, and that means another inventory slot gone. Like a lot of the times, its worth is like early game. So if you land Dooms and you land at the house that Benji does, like the blue house outside, there's a gas cannon there, and then if you use the dumpster through, there's another gas can there. So if you're in solos and there's someone landed in like the greenhouse, you could just chuck 2 gas cans on it, shoot them both, and like get double exploded there. But it's like a very minor occasion where your looting path, you've already got 3 chests if you're lucky to get the 2 that are there and the guaranteed one, and then you've picked up 2 on the way, but it's like you wouldn't be carrying those, in particular in solos, all the way through the game. So it's like they're pretty minimal opportunities to use them, and I think they're like good utility on the map. Oh, we're in a fight, there's one there, I can grab it and throw it. It's not going to happen very often, but something that can, it's not a problem.
Cool. I think we're in agreement there. Well, is that all we got, boys? Call it a day?
I think so.
All right. What are you spamming there?
It's Boomer Talk on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Make sure to go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out all of our other vids with Reiss 2 other times.
2 other times. Bangers, both of them, I tell you.
Thank you, Reiss, for joining again.
No problem. Thanks for having me, people.
We'll probably bother you at some point in the next, I don't know, a few months from now and ask you to come on again, but you're off the hook for now. So
okay. I'll look out for the harsh DMs I get from Taylor. I mean, like,
you fulfilled your seasonal your seasonal Boomer Talk podcast requirements.
It's good fun as always.
Follow Reiss on Twitter at ReissHub. Watch him on official FNCS broadcast. Check out his YouTube. Excellent comp content. Anything else I'm missing?
Bro, every social. YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, for some reason TikTok, which is like the easiest thing to blow up on in the world. All that shit.
All right, Taylor, you have anything?
Yeah. Have a great night, guys. Follow Jordan and myself on Twitter, YouTube. Make sure you follow Boomer Talk. I'm coming for you. Both on Twitter and YouTube, so you guys can watch the videos if you don't catch it live, or you want to see who our next guest is. Check out when we post the next YouTube video. Check us out on Twitter.
Oh wait, last thing before I sign off.
That's not it.
I think Salvatrezzo hit us with a fat host a few minutes ago. So if you're still watching, thanks for that host. Sorry that we were ending the stream kind of soon afterwards, but appreciate it. And anyway, see everybody.
Yo.